Bruce Broussard's journey from Lafayette, Louisiana to Portland, Oregon is a tale of leadership, community engagement, and dedication to the African American heritage of the city. Born into a family with strong cultural ties, Bruce's early life was shaped by his experiences on the farm. His transition to the Marine Corps marked a significant phase in his life, where he quickly rose to prominence within his platoon and later served as a training device instructor. Bruce's time in the military, including his unique role during the Vietnam War, honed his communication skills and resilience.
I'm Bruce Broussard. Ordinarily, my official title would be Hebert Broussard. I've got two last names. My mom wanted twins, and my brother's name is Herbert. Herbert, he has the R in his name. I don't have the R. And Hebert is a Creole name. It's a last name. And Broussard is a last name, Creole name aspect of it. So that's how that was my name. But I use Bruce Broussard to brand myself in the marketplace or just from a communication standpoint. Bruce is short for Broussard. Bruce is short for Broussard. Okay, and one of the ways I was able to get that piece was in the Marine Corps. I was a recruiter, a Marine recruiter when I came here, but a lot of times people couldn't pronounce my first name or last name, and in the Marine Corps they used to call me Buzzard, because I was the kind of guy that was always swooping down on folks when I was recruiting, so to speak. But the whole idea was I just used Bruce for short for Broussard. That's basically how I got my name, Bruce Broussard. Okay, and I guess that's about that's it. And from that particular point, it was somewhat universal in anything I did, for that matter. Whether I've got my own talk show, which is called the Oregon Voters Digest, which is another piece, if you will, that I have. The Voters Digest is I bought this from another entity. I was doing the typesetting when I was at the Portland Observer newspaper as a publisher editor, and I was doing that typesetting for this Voters Digest. The Voters Digest was the oldest. It was the oldest blue book in the state of Oregon. It was a conservative magazine, and I bought it, and I've kept it. And it basically the definition of it is that it basically interviewed, if you will, the political leadership for the entire state. Okay, did that piece, and so what I did, I just took that, and then I basically published. It was a publication, and I did about 3 of the publications, and things were transitioning, and I went from there to TV, and I got on TV because I was recruiting. I was a Marine recruiter, met guys like the Dick Bowles of the world and George Page, and George Page was working at that point in time for Channel 2 News. He was a videographer, and he was also at KBOO Radio. He was a former military guy, and so consequently, we worked together. I was born in Lafayette, Louisiana, a little town named Mauriceville, right off of 201. And it was short down, but it was on a farm by a midwife aspect of it. And it's kind of interesting about that particular piece because my family moved to Houston, Texas. And for a period of time, we went to schools up in Houston, whatever. But every summer, we'd always go back to the farm, which was interesting. And, pick cotton and shuck corn and rice fields and the whole 9 yards. But we had a pretty solid family environment in that town that I was living in, because my parents and relatives owned their own farms and this, that, and the other, and we did that piece, and that I got a lot of my culture from that particular aspect of it and that transitioning. And then, like I said, then we were up in Houston, Texas aspect of it. But that's, and then I think I was raised there in that area in Houston, with the high school there and all that other good stuff, and that was another venture of my life, so to speak. And the thing that I got attached to while I was going to school, there were a lot of other little things that I was there. I was pretty good with my hands. I was pretty good with math and things of that nature. And one of the things that comes to mind is that I won a national award from the Ford Motor Company. I made in metal shop. I spun aluminum into a chafing dish, and it went national. And I won this trip to Dearborn, Michigan, and had the opportunity to shake hands with the president and the CEO of Ford Motor Company. And it was about a week. It was the first time I'd ever gotten out in that kind of an adventure aspect of it. But it was a very neat experience, let's put it that way. And then after I won a numerous prize locally in Houston with reference to the aluminum situation, and got involved with as far as my studies were concerned, again, that's kind of like where my branding started, if you will. But I was doing these kinds of things, and I had a little shop in the back of my home there in Houston, and I can still remember putting together a kind of a, how does one go about getting sulfur out of the ground? And I put together this mechanism and whatever, and how to do that piece. That was a kind of an interesting piece. And during that particular time, as far as income and whatever, as a young dude, I was shining shoes. And Lyons Avenue was kind of like a main venue, like MLK, so to speak. In the old days, they had Williams Avenue or whatever, but I was Lyons Avenue. And there I had the opportunity. That's really where my communication skills came, because that's how I got my tips. I got my tips. I was going to school, the whole 9 yards, and God is good, because in the state of Texas, there had never been a black ROTC program, and the whites had the deal up in Houston. We had nothing. We were the first high school that picked up ROTC, and I joined. I joined as a private, and that's and actually that's when I learned the military. That's how the military. I started in the military. I went from private to the commanding colonel of the ROTC program. I was the lead guy, and then I got involved in the drilling aspect of it, and every Thanksgiving game between the two black schools, high schools, Jack Yates High. I'll never forget that, Jack Yates House, and Wheatley High School. I was the drill instructor. We performed there at halftime, and that was a beautiful piece. But I was the lead guy, and then a number of my friends, if you will, that were part of that deal. And when I was the guy, went all the way up, if you will. Then I graduated from high school, and typically when you with school aspect of it, my parents weren't and educated, they weren't college. Dad was just a regular blue collar type of a guy working for Sinclair Oil Refining as a laborer. And Mom was a maid, so to speak, and she did her piece. But we had parents, solid as a rock, and so consequently, as a result of that, and typically now I can talk about it. Now I graduated with A's. I got a scholarship, and got a scholarship to school, and I went to Texas Southern University. And I did that for a while, and then all of a sudden I saw John Glenn up in California going to the moon, and I said, I want to be a space pilot, or so I want to get out there and do that piece. So so all of a sudden, because of my relationship with my family and whatever, we had relatives that were working up in California and living there too, and whatever. And I went to school. I said, I'm leaving. I'm going. I gave up the scholarship and went to Northrop Institute of Technology and started. And then that's when all of a sudden I got surprised. my A's that I was making in the southern school up in Houston, Texas, were C's and D's in L.A. And that was sort of a shocker to a certain degree. But I had one thing, and I didn't know it at the time, but I was in the process. I had developed my brand to start with, the military, through ROTC. And then all of a sudden, the war broke out. And I'm walking down, and I'm basically trying to figure out what I was going to do here at North Institute of Technology. And I decided to go to LACC for a while, Los Angeles City College. And it kind of broke the ice a little bit of it. And I said, well, then you start learning about my father wasn't a doctor. He wasn't this, that. He was just a regular common laborer. So he really couldn't do anything to kind of help me define the grades I was making. He couldn't define what application does algebra bring. What about the English skills? What is biology? You were taking biology, but I knew shop work. I knew I could work with my hands routine, and I knew I could communicate a bit because I was shining shoes, and that's how I was able to survive to a certain degree. And so, but it wasn't gelling at that point in time. But when I joined the Marine Corps, and when I went to boot camp, still remember that day, went to boot camp, and I was the only black servant in the Corps at that time, in my particular unit. And I can still see that sergeant saying to me, well, gee, does anybody know their right foot from their left foot? And I knew my right foot from my left foot. And all of a sudden, I became the lead guy of my platoon. I was the head dude. And that was an interesting piece because there were people from all over the country, if you will, that were Marines, in boot camp or whatever. And I was always having a little problem with being black in the unit. So I was always doing a little fighting or whatever. But no point, it was all good stuff. And I still remember this, and I'm going to say it just fluently. I can still remember that the sergeant who was in charge of the unit, he called me into his office, and he called us Mouse and said, come on in here. Come on up here. And he had me standing at attention, and then standing in attention of a mirror. And he said to me, he said, okay, fine. Attention. He said, oh, look over your head. And I looked over my head. What do you see? Sir, just me. I said, what do you see? I said, black ass. He said, okay, next. See you later. And never had any problem. And that was a very interesting piece. I still bring tears to my eyes, but I remember those times. When I went all the way through the ranks and graduated with honors, and I had a good math grade. One and one is still two anywhere you go, and I was good in math. And next thing I knew, I got assigned to my MOS, which is a military occupational skill. That's your graduation degree. And they assigned me to training device instructor. I had a 6400 MOS. Basically, it's basically the blue boxers, if you will, are training devices. And I was assigned to that particular unit. And I went to school, electronic school up in Memphis, Tennessee, and did that piece for a while, and graduated with that piece, and came back to El Toro, California, Santa Ana, California. And there I was the only black that was sitting up in there. And our job was to basically train ground school, so to speak, and basically train pilots about basic, whether it be navigation skills, things like that, all kinds of weird stuff, whatever. But that's what I did when I was in the Corps. And then after a while, Vietnam broke out, and I was at the time we was kind of like in the B battalion. So we were highly trained technicians, and so consequently we were necessary much, just a few of us, not that much. And I was just, like I say, one of the guys doing this job. And next thing I knew, commanding general of the Marine Corps came through, and we had an inspection. And says, okay, fine, well, who are those Marines over there? We didn't have any M16s. And he said, shoot, And I'm like, 16? No, in order to be the Corps, you got to have an M16. And so that was just something that just came out of my head on that particular piece. But the next thing I knew, I got orders to go to Vietnam. And I went down to Vietnam and reported to the barracks and to the CO. It was a helicopter base instructor up in I Corps. And I reported to the old man, and the old man said, well, okay, fine, what are you doing here, Sergeant? Because at the time I knew him because he was one of the individuals that I trained. And he said, well, gee, we don't have no use for a TD electronics guy like you. If anything, you shouldn't even be here. So he ended up basically saying, okay, fine, Rock, would you do me a favor? Do us a favor. I need someone to help me out over here with my NCO club, with our troops. We got a lot of troops over there, and they're having problems. They're stressed out, so to speak. They can't drink any booze. They're not officers. Can't drink any booze, and the entertainment is a problem, whatever. And he just basically looked at my communication skills. So I became a club manager up in Vietnam, and I found out that it was communication skill. There was probably about 400 or 500 people that I had to cater to. These are E2s and below, just PFCs and below aspect of it, and corporals. Yeah, corporal was in the name, and that's what I. So I basically developed the entertainment, if you will, for the entire base, for the enlisted men. Then I would take them to the Ville, put together some programs. If you did a good job on the line, whether it be repairing helicopters or this, that, and the other, we'd select some folks, and I'd pick up a 6x and take them down to the Ville and let them meet Mama San, and do activities and take a corpsman with me and bring him on back or whatever. That was very enjoyable. Okay, I came to Portland right there. In fact, that's basically how I came through Portland. I got assigned out of Vietnam to recruiting school, Marine recruiting school. I went down to North Carolina and went to recruiting school, and all of a sudden one day after I graduated from recruiting school, he said, Bruce, you're going to be assigned to Portland, Oregon. Portland, Oregon. Where is that? That's in Washington. Washington. Oh, gee, I'm going to be with the fellas up in D.C. He said, no, Pacific Northwest. I said, where's the Pacific Northwest? So they showed me a globe and said, there it is right there. Pacific Northwest. You got to be kidding me. So here I am. Hey, I can still remember driving my car, because by this time I'd picked up my car that I had left at my mom's house up in Houston, a little 56 T-Bird, which I still have today. And I drove it down to Portland, Oregon, and I'd come around that bend, and all of a sudden he's this little town or whatever. And so the first thing I'd say, where are the black folks? He said, well, he said, go down to the water hole over here. So next thing I do, I'm sitting down there at Geneva's and whatever. But the bottom line, Geneva with Paul Knowles and folks like that. But the bottom line, I was a recruiter, and I was recruiting downtown Portland at the old Pioneer Post Office. The one-stop dude kind of a guy. I was a recruiter, and did that piece, and then all of a sudden one day I said, well, gee whiz, the people need to be exposed. Young brothers need to be exposed. At that time, I'm trying to get the numbers, and so I opened up a shop on MLK. It was Union Avenue at the time. Opened up a shop there on Shaver and MLK, right over there by the Burger Barn. Had a little shop there, and I invited other recruiters from the Army, the Air Force, the Coast Guard, and we basically were there recruiting, and that was kind of a good, interesting. Then I worked with JDH and worked with the young folks and got around. In fact, I still identify myself today stand by the gentleman by the name of Answer Haggerty. Most people might think about him as Judge Haggerty. Remember the federal judge who basically approached that whole deal with the Klan kind of a thing, but anyway, he's still here. He was a Marine. He was a Marine lieutenant, and Answer was from here. In fact, he's still living here. But the bottom line is that that was my charge. And typically, you have a family. Hard to raise a family while you're in the Corps aspect of it. But all of a sudden, I lost my family, so to speak, and I just gave it up after a good 10 years. I gave it up after 10 years and said, okay, fine. And it was okay, fine. I'm gonna get out here and do something, take care of my family, and get the divorce aspect of it. But I said, what do I do now? Well, I'd been a recruiter. I knew everybody, so to speak, talking to this or that and the other. And so I said, where do I go? Because I had a good background in communication, and so to speak, and then I went and I worked a little bit over here, and did the IBM thing, and I did the U.S. Bank thing. I was a banker for a while, and I did a little of everything. And I said, well, gee whiz, I got to get a little bit more structure. I want to do something else. I said, so maybe my field might be something else. And then I started messing around with politicians, start seeing what they were doing. And I said, well, gee whiz, I think I don't have to worry about that. I went to school for a little bit. I went to school for a while. I said, most people said, well, gee whiz, you got to go on and get your degree now. And probably had I probably had enough for probably a master's degree, and just picking up different kind of courses, but never basically focusing, to get the degree piece. Because I said, well, gee whiz, I've already graduated from college, just going through the Marine Corps. I mean, that's my career, it's communication field. So how do I get my name, developing that brand, trying to figure out who am I? And so I decided, I said, well, gee whiz, I think I'm going to run for office. Because I was looking at the community and seeing what the issues were and this, that, and the other, and no advancement, just being black and just existing as black. And I said, well, actually, I never lived in a world where just it's a black deal. I mean, I got to eat and I got to communicate with everybody. And so I just decided, I said, well, gee, I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to run for office. Didn't take nothing but a small fee aspect of it and knock on a few doors and this, that, and the other. And I did. I ran for state representative. But my mindset was that all I wanted to do was, and then that was the other thing, talking to people was kind of an interesting piece. I found out that when you're wanting to talk to a person, you have to have certain qualifications. You have to have a degree, or this, that, and the other. And I said, well, wait a minute, what's this? But I just had Broussard in the front of my name. And so I said, well, gee whiz, I need to put something in the front of my name. So I put it, so by basically running for office, I had something in front of my name. I was running for the legislature. I can still remember running for the state legislature. And I guess a guy by the name of Wally Priestley up in northeast Portland. And I was at the Portland Observer at that point in time. I was doing some other things over at the Portland Observer. And a lot of other things I was doing. But the point of the matter is that I ran for office. And I'll say this to everyone for that matter. And I learned that all I was wanting to do was to get out there and communicate the fact that I was somebody, to share my story. It didn't have to be a degree. I could just say, this is who Bruce Broussard is, and this is what I've done, and this is how I've done it, at my point, and I can respond to some of the issues that are here. And people would open the door and give you that opportunity to do that. So it wasn't a degree. I already had my degree, and I felt good about that. I was somebody, and I'd been on committees. I've been all kinds of good stuff. So I did that for a while, and so I just figured out, said, well, gee whiz, I'm going to keep that in my portfolio. So every 2 years I run for something. I've run for the state legislature. I run for state senator. I run for mayor of Portland. I run for city council. I run for Congress, all reputable. I've run for the U.S. Senate, and I've learned something only in doing the primary. And I've never knocked on a door. I've never knocked on a door. I just used the primary, because I know you have to go to another scale when you get it, if you're sitting in that seat, because now you're exposed that you've got to represent everybody into more specific things. In the primary, you're with a group of folks, and each have established lanes. I had my lane, they had their lane. And because I had that recruiting background, I knew the city, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I was expressing myself. And my thing is that if it was important enough, boom, I can get into the seat. But I wasn't going to venture out of that lane. I was going to stay in that lane and do that job. Well, if you don't get elected, well, boom, no problem. See? So I did that and felt good. Even to this day, I felt good about that piece, and to the point that I plan to run for city council, either city council or the mayor of the city of Portland. I got the background, I got the credentials, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but it's in the primary. And then the other thing that I'm looking at doing is educating the public. That's the other thing I would say as far as the brand is concerned today. That brand today is, the brand today for me is to inform and educate. Everything that I do today is all based on educating and informing. Educating the young folks, and just being even more specific to African American, this, that, and the other, black folks. You get young cats, and then even from the standpoint of the military, it's a heck of a career opportunity for a lot of young brothers, you know what I mean, that have no way of where to go, and this, that, and the other. The family is sort of broken up nowadays. It's not as solid as it used to be when I was growing up. Got my point? But when you get into that military piece, you automatically get a family. And if you can make it through boot camp, you establish, it's a whole different world aspect of it. But it's a good thing. It's a good thing. So with that, that's kind of like my whole life, and I can go beyond that point. A journalist, it was basically it's still communication aspect of it. I had the opportunity at like I said, it was George Page that brought George Page and a guy named Larry Dunham, when we first got cable access, Northeast Spectrum, with the Northeast Spectrum right now is basically local community television aspect of it. And I knew a guy named Larry Dunham. He was a former military guy, getting the relationships, and he asked me to come on the show one day and do a show because he couldn't get other folks to come to the show. And I started out with Larry Dunham at cable aspect of it, and I went from a 30-minute show to an hour show to a 2-hour show. And then you went from there, and I went to KBOO. And creative enough, I was doing my show, besides my visual show, live show aspect of it, I was also able, I did KBOO. So I was doing KBOO and the show at the same time, which was good. And then as time goes, you've learned the skills to the point of staying in your own lane, and I had all these experiences and backgrounds and things of that nature. I didn't have to look at notes. And my format was very simple. I knew who I was, and I knew that if I'm interviewing someone, it's not about me, it's about the individual. So I would ask the person to basically give me 3 or 4 questions that I would ask them. Therefore, they would be more comfortable interviewing, not looking at the camera, not getting off of that lane, and it got to be an enjoyable show. So I knew the definition between the difference between an interviewer and a person that's being interviewed. I would like folks to at least recall the things that I've done, which I've documented. They can go to YouTube or whatever, things that I've documented, so that and being shared, if you will, with young people. And I've been more specifically to young African Americans in this city, that were home for that matter. And hopefully they don't have to go through some of the things that I've gone. They can get a good formal education. When they get out of high school, they can graduate, they can go on and pick up a college degree. Because in all due respect, they can't do what I do today without a degree. It's kind of like, I'm just saying that's part, but that's just one lane. But you can still get a good lane with reference to graduating from high school, but a good diploma. You got to graduate. You got to have some piece of paper today in order to get in the front of the table. To do what I've done, to replicate what I've done, would be very hard for folks after me. But while I'm still living, I'm going to grab some of those folks that basically maybe had the same kind of background that I have, that I'm doing now, to communicate. And that's still on tape. They can still do that piece. So that's kind of like where I'm at. Be a good family man, you know what I mean? Trying to raise your kids and, you know, because I'm a family person, family man, and wife and kids, and you be respectful to you. You got quite a heritage. We got a heck of a history with reference to black folks, and we can go in there, but don't get lost in that historical piece. You got to live the present, because we all have to eat. I don't know if you're a CEO, you got to eat, and respect your level where you eat as solid as a rock. That's where I'm at.
Thanks for tuning in to Oregon Hidden Legacy. For more information about this podcast, go to OregonHiddenLegacy.org.